tell me, how did this all start? How'd you get into the business?
My dad said one good real estate investment is worth a lifetime of hard work. So that got me motivated. He also said, go out and get a lot. And I thought he was talking about real estate, but he was talking about girls, and I just got confused. So,
Yeah,
but
I hear you.
the girls showed up later when I got all the real
Well,
estate.
you got the real estate, and the girl showed up. Okay, that's good to know. Um, uh, it's funny, uh, this is not about me, but it's ironic. I was a school teacher before I got into this. My father was a school teacher. And when I first learned how to use an Excel spreadsheet, I, I started doing some math, and the Excel spreadsheet that I was playing with, I was running the formula on my father's total like wealth and income, right? Because I was a school teacher, he was a school teacher. And so, and he was not a very good real estate investor. Currently, right now, I'm kind of thinking I'm following in his footsteps in that, but he wasn't a terribly good real estate investor, but he did do it. And the sheer act of doing it created more money for our family than the net total of all of his 35 years as a school teacher working. And so it was a very slippery slope. So then I applied, I'm like, well, he spent maybe 10% of his time. And the multiplier on his time was this. So I started going, well, what happens if I take my school teaching career and I do 20%, 30%, 40%? And obviously it was clear slippery slope that the only rational course of action was to go 100% real estate and 0% teaching. And so I had about 2 more years left of teaching and I was out, so anyways, that just is similar to, I think, your conversation. So how would you then, how would you describe that you make money in real estate?
Making money the, it wasn't the primary focus. The primary focus was creating value. And creating value to me was important. And, whatever the mind of man can see and believe, he shall achieve. So if you have a vision and you have goals, and bringing those into reality was the most important thing. And the money kind of showed up.
So that's a really important thought process there. There's not a success book on the face of the earth, including the Bible, that doesn't say what you visualize and you believe to be true and that you point your energy toward is the thing that you will manifest. So talk to me a little bit more about what your vision then was.
The, the vision in real estate is you either have one or two paradigms. One is scarcity, where there's one pie and you chop up the pie and you all go home and everybody has a piece of pie and that's the end of the day. The other paradigm was, let's create more pies. Let's do an abundance theory. So real estate is about creating more pies, and my thing, and that you're creating value, you're creating opportunities, you're creating the opportunities to make money. And most of the time, if you focus on that, the abundance is a lot better than the scarcity approach.
Interesting. Okay. So essentially that value creation has sort of a flywheel effect it's not necessarily, you don't have to take from somebody else in order to create something that creation process is the thing. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Making more pies and creating more wealth and abundance for everybody. It's not a zero-sum game. It's let's create more value.
So in that, then you've used the word value, and I'm glad, because that's, from my standpoint, that's the key feature. What I've seen, how how you approach your business, value is a key feature. So what are you looking for? How do you disseminate what value is in your model? What are you looking for?
I look for three predominantly things. I look for properties that are needing cosmetic improvements. I don't want to do a lot of heavy lifting. I just want to go in there, find the properties that need some cosmetics, paint, stucco, lipstick, that jazz up the properties and increase the eye appeal. I want properties that are mismanaged, that have problems. And I want properties where the potential for raising rent is there and bringing things closer to market value. Those are the three things I look for, and then I go develop a plan to bring those things into reality and work towards that goal. And usually when you do that, you're creating, again, more value.
You use the word lipstick, and that's something that oftentimes people talk about that from a sort of derogatory standpoint, you know. Tell me more about that. I haven't seen what you do to be a lipstick oriented, you know, cosmetic. Like that's an awful lot of lipstick when you're, you know, restuccoing a building, putting a new roof on and redoing electrical and, you know, so I think I'd like you to expand on that a little bit. Give me an example of a project that you know, have recently worked on and like
I've
what
been
are
doing
those
it,
things that you did? Because it's not lipstick.
I've been doing it for so long, and I tend to take it for granted. But yes, you're right. It takes if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and it's not easy. So the latest example was a 40-unit building in Mar Vista. Had all the right things wrong with rents below market, needing a lot of cosmetic improvements,
Right.
and totally mismanaged. So we've gone into that property, and over the last year, it's probably spent $1 million in putting in security, walkways, fixing all the stairs, painting the building, redoing the parking so that it was secure and controlled access, and made the whole community and that end of the block put in new landscaping. It just elevated the building, and it turned a 1957 building into something that resembles not new construction, but almost new construction without having to spend all that extra money.
Right. Right.
That would be the latest example.
Right. Right. So so is there a formula maybe that you know, when you for an investor that's looking at something like that, right? So you've got the cost of the asset. You know, is there a formula that you're looking at when you, because you can add value to the point where you're not making money anymore. So, you know, what insight would you give to somebody who's looking to do this?
That example, you're absolutely right. You can over improve and not get a yield on your investment. The nice thing about real estate in and of itself, it's not calculus, it's not any any calculations that you have to spend a lot of time on. It's either cost per unit, cost per square foot, multipliers, and that's all basic math. So if you take those same principles, what you're looking for,
Mhm.
you always go to the market and you see what comparables are doing, and based upon comps and based upon what you're buying the property at, there's got to be a significant difference or potential to reach those higher cost per square foot and higher rents and et cetera. So as long as those basics are in place, you should, and you have a game plan for obtaining those higher numbers, then it should work out rather nicely. But it's not an easy It's not easy, and thank God it's not easy, because then everybody would be doing it.
Right, right. And you know, it's interesting right now. We're in a space from a timing standpoint in the market where there was a lot of money and there were a lot of new players that had entered the market in the last maybe 10 years. And we're sort of in a new place, especially if we're talking multifamily. Um, we're not seeing that same level of enthusiasm and activity. So the argument could be made that it's gotten yet harder than it was, you know, previously due to the regulations and you know the bureaucracy that the city has kind of layered into multifamily that makes it that much harder, and some of the tax consequences of adding value to real estate right now, thanks to ULA and whatnot. Um, the the question that had popped up in my head when you were speaking was, so what's a typical timeline for reaping an upside, you know, in your model? How does that upside factor work when you're dealing with a product that has a lot of regulation, you know, as you are well aware, and most people who have, you know, at least dabbled in real estate in Los Angeles know that most of Los Angeles is rent controlled. Tenants have a lot of um, uh, they have a lot of power and you know, control over the outcome of their tenancy. So, you know, how does that work for you in a multifamily setting in terms of reaping upside?
So rephrase the question. There's
How
there's
do
a
you,
lot of
what's your
different.
timeline? Yeah, thank you. What's your timeline for reaching an objective for multifamily property?
Um, I'm in it for the long run. I don't look at time. Um, it's, if I'm doing a renovation, I want to get the renovation done in time. If I'm putting in management, all that, all those things have their time factor, but the implementation of that should be 6 months to a year. And then, but it's the longer term approach. I'm not looking to buy something and flip it. I'm
Got
like,
it.
um, so it's a longer term game plan. It's maintaining the property after it's up and running. It's constantly, you know, you talked about regulations, you talked about um, different different tax laws, ULA taxes, rent freezes due to fires and all these new ordinances that come in that makes it very complicated, very uh, sort of taking away the bundle of rights from the real estate ownership vantage point. But again, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And I want to keep the guys that the neophytes out of the business that don't know what they're doing, because it's hard to find the proverbial needle in the haystack. If
Right.
you have to learn how to say no, and no is not a bad word in real estate. Because you have to, after sifting through maybe 50 properties, you'll find one that, you know, meets those criterias that really gives a compelling enough response to play ball, to write checks.
So what's your process for finding those properties?
And reputation, I think, is the primary factor. If you, I have a broker's license, my background's a CPA. I try to set the example with dealing with my fellow realtors. If I say something, I do it. I try to bring things to the table to help them make their job easier, and I let a lot of other brokers represent me in the acquisition of these properties, because it's not about necessarily the brokerage fee. Doesn't hurt, but the game plan, again, it's longer term. I'm in it for the long term, and so reputation is important, and doing real estate. Having a track record that people can look to and say, he knows what he's doing. Make sure that my, bankers understand my theory and and my application of how to make real estate investments work. And I started in 1972 and it's, 2025, so and I'm not done as far as real estate.
I've tried to make you done. But, you know.
I don't know if that answered the question, but that's kind of my thought.
No, I mean, so I'm going to summarize just a little bit, because what I think what you really spoke to was that the process of finding the right property isn't necessarily about you staring at your computer screen and looking for deals all day. It's about cultivating relationships in a network so that the people that are in the trenches every single day know to contact you when the right property comes up. And that how you behave to that network of people is the long-term strategy of treating people right and doing good is the long-term strategy. So again, it goes back to that concept of abundance, that I think is a driving force to that whole strategy.
Relationship with brokers and that are knowledgeable and has always provided me a lot of knowledge sharing, and they know the sellers, they know what the sellers really want, and being upfront with them and telling them what you can do versus what you can't do, and working through problems and solving them. When there's a real estate problem or issue, that's an opportunity. It's not a problem. It's an opportunity to fix it, and you have to look at it from that vantage point. And that's how you buy properties better. You can adjust prices. You can make a transaction come together when a lot of them don't necessarily.
One of the things that I reflect on this a lot in my own sort of education and my own business, but I also share it as a mentor. As you know, I've had a handful of guys over the years and girls that have come through my brokerage. One of the things that I am adamant about is that the client is the source of your education, and that the more time when you're prospecting as an agent, prospecting, the more you can shut up and listen to the client, and then engage in a real conversation where you come away actually learning from something and appreciate that knowledge that you can, like, it'll come both ways. You'll pick up information and be able to share it too, but to get the sale out of your head and really focus on where that conversation can take a genuine place. And most people are I have found most people are pretty forthright. They like to share what they've learned. They like being a person of authority, and that is it's a huge wealth of information. Again, coming from a educating background, when I got started in this business, I Googled, investment real estate thinking I had invented something. And I thought I invented it. I was like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to do real estate where it's the numbers, and it's not just the tile. And I think I'm going to make a lot of money if I do it that way. And I had no idea. I just had no idea that the world was built with investment money. Anyways, the long-term takeaway from all that is that there's just so much that you can learn through a reciprocal, type of relationship. Anyways, we've talked a little bit about GRM. You mentioned GRM, price per square foot, and cap rate. Again, for those that are sort of, just hearing this, so gross rent multiplier is the total income that a property generates in the course of a year. how is there, that's a number that I've personally used quite a bit, but is there one of those metrics that you have leaned on more, the actual cost of the real estate, the cap rate, which is the calculated rate of return after all expenses, and GRM, which is that total annualized rent? Is there a method that you like better when you're looking at properties?
It's all about income. It's all about what that asset can earn, based upon comparables, based upon, um, the market. So and the market goes up and down, and you can't be concerned if it's going up and down. You just need to look what's out on the marketplace, do your homework, do your comps, rent. If you analyze rents, you've done everything, it's always going back to rents, always going back to income. Income is the driving force of any investment property. So
So it's not even GRM. It's just the income. Forget the GRM. That's a function of value. And that can go up and down depending on a market.
yeah, and how do you make what is, income determines the ultimate sales value. Income determines if you're gonna get cash flow. And income is gonna determine if you can refinance the property and take some of your money out of the property. So in real estate, you don't get to touch your income or your equity. Equity is kind of an illusion until you either sell or you refinance and actually taste some of it, get some
Right.
back in your hand. So, and all that is, if your income goes down, you're not gonna get any of that. So
Right.
it's all about income, and when you're finished with income, it's more about income. When you're finished with income, it's more about more income. So it's income, income, income.
Well said. Location, location, location. You heard it here first. Income, income, income. Take your location.
Everybody compares, cap rates to what you're making on the interest on the bank account and what you're making in investment real estate. So it's all about the income. It's all about the interest rate, dividends. And, if you're in the stock market, it's all taxable. If you're making money, cash flow in real estate, you can shelter a good part of it because of certain tax laws, et cetera. So again, it's all about income. The stock market today doesn't necessarily hold true that it sells at a multiple times what it's supposed to. It's, like Tesla's 80 times or a lot more value added than supported by other car dealers that are that are valued at a more realistic number.
Right.
You can't buy into the fallacies of 21 times the gross and those type of things. You wanna, if you wanna buy into that, you wanna sell at that, but you certainly don't wanna buy it.
There, you heard it here first. 21 times gross is is an illusion. Talk about an illusion. Yeah. Yeah.
A noble ambition to achieve, but I don't know if that's possible.
So with that in mind, so again, just on that note, we've seen, I'm going to go back to that gross rent multiplier just for the sake of the next part of this conversation. So in the west side, in the multifamily world where, you have dwelt, the majority of your assets are located, the gross rent multipliers have gone from 11 times the gross rents. If we're going way back, I'm just starting us back from like the last big recession, right? So they fell down to 10, 11, times the gross rents back in 2008, 9, 10, 11. We saw incredibly low interest rates coming out of the Great Recession, and the end of that recovery, we watched them climb 13, 14, 15, 16. Then the true rock and roll froth started to kind of kick in. I would put I don't know, 2016 maybe, somewhere in that range, 17, 18. And it stayed with us until COVID for the most part. And then we saw some serious bumps during COVID. And then we saw a little bit of recovery, but interest rates have been very persnickety, and we are now, I've now got properties that are being offered at 13. And I think if we were to look at that property that you quoted, that you purchased on the 40 units, that was what, maybe 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that range. So what do you think is happening in the market today?
In relation to what specifically?
Well, there's an awful lot of conversation amongst the investors that I've worked with, in terms of outlook. And you've got a lot of context and a lot of history. So I'm curious to know if you had to put your money on what's going to happen with real estate valuations, if we were to contextualize them into cap rates or GRMs, do you have a thought as to what you see happening in the next year or two?
I always want to be in a position to be able to acquire real estate, to find those proverbial needle in the haystack, no matter which way the economy is going. If it's going in a recession, if it's going the other way, you're good. As things change and as things get quote higher rates of interest, new regulations, all the things that come into play. Again, if you're in it for the long run, you're still looking for the basics. It's something that you can increase the management, that you can raise the rents to market, and you can do cosmetic improvements. It's all back to the basics. It doesn't matter what's happening. It matters what's happening in the market, but the market creates opportunities, and you should be in a position to take advantage of those no matter which way the market is going.
Very interesting and insightful. So in the stock market, it's harder to make that case, but in the real estate market, given your orientation toward value and the idea that if there's value today, there will be value tomorrow, irrespective of whether the trend line is moving upward or downward, the long-term investor should just be ready to take advantage of opportunities within the market.
If you're investing in the stock market, you have less control. When you're investing in a CD, you have less control. When you are investing in real estate, you have the illusion of control.
I was wondering where you're going with that, because I'm like, yeah, you do. You got more control. And I'm thinking about my own portfolio. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not,
The illusion is that, the market changes, interest rates go up and blah, 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 blah. So you don't control everything, but at least you can control what you're going to raise the rent to. You can control if you're going to paint the building a certain color. You can make some decisions that may affect the value. In the other investments, you're idle. You're sitting by and you're at the whim of the marketplace.
Right.
Here you in real estate, you've got, well, I think I can control it a little bit. I think my input into this investment will make a difference, will create
Right.
the value, and if you are right 9 out of 10 times, you're doing pretty darn good.
Right. Got it. You can make it better. You can make it work. So I had the question here, what's the opportunity? What's the challenge? But the opportunity is it's always, it sounds like your answer is it's always sort of there.
What?
So the opportunity. So what do you see in the opportunity today? What's the opportunity for you today in the marketplace?
I traded out of a lot of residential income property to switch into triple nets and to kind of get retirement. And I went and did that, and then I looked at those investments today that are out of state and what they're looking at cap rates and what the getting rent per square foot. When I was originally buying those things, they were half of what they were here in California. Today, they're equal to what's here in California. There's no reason to buy those type of cap rates and buy those type of properties out of state when you at least, if you're closer to home, you have that illusion of control. So I sold most of those and traded back into California real estate and went into triple net properties versus apartments.
Right.
And so it's moving with the marketplace, and that vantage point. Well, I saw those numbers and I go, well, that's ridiculous. So it's a good time to sell those type of properties.
Right.
Those assets over here at those high numbers and bring them back here and put those assets here to work. And I think I can do better than what that income was, but it takes more effort. Those are all triple nets. I was collecting a check and going to sleep.
Right.
Now I'm back in the game. And
I don't think you like sleep, Mike. I don't think you like sleeping much, but based on the last couple of years, I don't think sleeping is your thing.
And it's, yeah, and it's, to me, it's not work. It's fun. I enjoy it. It takes a lot of time. If it's not for the faint of heart, but it's, if you put the effort in, you'll have the benefits. And again, it's not short term. It's a longer term game plan.
This is sort of a funny question because you are still very active today. So if you were getting started though today, so what advice would you give to yourself if you were picking it up right
now? What advice would I give to myself about real estate?
Yeah. Which is to say, what do you give to the new guy or girl who's trying to get started today? What's the advice that you give?
Put your goals to reality. Have a game plan. Stay focused. Be a sponge. You want to learn from everybody. You want to listen to people. You want to gain insight, but at the end of the day, you want to make your own decisions, and you want to, again, set the example, set a standard. You want to choose who you want as clients. In this business, you are in control of who you want to deal with and who you don't want to deal with, and who you associate with, and who you aspire to become and achieve. So if you have to have a longer term vision of, and you have to be able to adjust, and and it takes a Herculean effort and to maintain consistency and not give up.
There's the quote of the day, right? The amount of effort to stay consistent is probably far greater than the amount of effort necessary to wiggle and wobble and move around.
You want to stay consistent. You want to set if you want people that you can rely on, you have to be reliable. And you have to be consistent, and that I have friends in the real estate business that I've had for 50 to 60 years, and they're all real estate people, and they're all in the business, and we're not competitors. We help each other. We pick each other's brain. We do transactions today together.
Yeah.
So it's that longer term approach, and the beauty of real estate and is you have the ability to choose who you want to associate with. And I would think that that would be a paradigm that allows you to create your own environment, hopefully.
Wow. I think that's the perfect place to kind of bring this thing to a close. That was very thoughtful, certainly for me even. And I've known you for 15 years. I always learn something when I spend a little bit when we spend a little time together. So
Likewise.
you know, I suppose the only closing statement here or thought would be, you know, I think you've kind of already spoken to it, but what makes, you know, what makes life meaningful to you from within all this context, or not this context?
You know, my dad said, leave this place a little bit better than you found it. What's most important to me is my reputation, creating value for my family and for my loved ones. And that's most important. And I don't, the good opinion of most people isn't worth anything. So you have to have your own opinion, and you have to be comfortable with it, and you have to be comfortable with who you are, and you can't listen to everybody.
Right.
You just, because you'll never make clear enough decisions, you'll never find out what you're really made of.
All right. That's fantastic. Mike, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun. And as you, I suppose your dad said, by the way, my mother said the same thing, kindergarten teacher. So your dad was a cop. My mom was a kindergarten teacher. Both had a very similar message. Leave the world better than you found it. All right, Mike, thanks.
That was that generation. I hope that generation is still around someday.
I'm pretty, yeah, I'm pretty strict with my kids. That's one of my golden rules with them, is to never pass through a space and not make it better than it was before. So
Thank you. Have a good day. Anything else you need, I'm here.
thanks, Mike. Talk to you soon.